Good morning, and welcome candidates, those of you who are in the audience, and those viewing us at home. As a courtesy to all present, please silence your cell phones. All 5 seats on the Johnson County Board of Supervisors will be on the ballot this year due to a new law passed by last year's legislative session. It requires that Johnson County be divided into 5 districts and that 1 representative be elected from each district to comprise the full Board of Supervisors. Johnson County voters will be able to vote for only 1 member of the board passed based on where they live. For those of you who are in our audience today, there are these friendly FAQ notices over at the table behind me if you would like more information. Today, this is the primary race candidate forum for the Democratic nomination for Johnson County Board of Supervisors, District 4. District 4 is made up of the north side of Iowa City and will be for a 2-year term. Both candidates today are members of the Democratic Party. The Republican position on this ballot is uncontested. I'm Shannon Patrick, member of the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, and I will be the moderator for today's forum. It is also being filmed for rebroadcast on 3 public education and government channels in Iowa City and will be live streamed on the League of Women Voters Facebook page. Please check the websites for the aforementioned TV stations for scheduling. The League of Women Voters is a volunteer, nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes any party or candidate, which is why we have the policy that campaign literature is welcome outside this room and following the forum, and that no buttons, signs, or literature can be worn or distributed inside this room. The League does take positions after considerable study of issues and acts to influence decision makers on those issues. We work not only to register voters, but also to provide them with information on issues to assist their participation in government. Membership is open to anyone 16 years of age or older. Join us. We can use your time, your talent, and your financial resources. League members advocate and inform voters. Democracy works best when more people are involved. Find us at www.lwvjc.org. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates. All viable candidates have been invited to participate. After candidates have been introduced, they will each have 2 minutes for opening remarks. We will then present questions to them, starting with one from the League and followed by the one submitted on cards by you in the audience. League members are distributing cards and pencils for you to write questions on. You may submit as many written questions for the candidates as you wish. Hold up the cards and a League member will collect them throughout the forum and bring them to me to read. Questions that fall into the same general category will be consolidated. If time does not allow for all questions to be addressed, which seems likely, judging at what we've received already, you may contact the candidates directly after the forum or at another time. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question. Due to the time frame, there will not be time for rebuttals. Near the end of the scheduled time for this event, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. Speaking order will be rotated throughout the morning. Kathy Eisenhofer, League member, is our timekeeper today, using cards to alert candidates when time is about to be up and when time is up. V. Fixmer-Orais and Rod Sullivan are seeking the District 4 position on the Democratic ballot. One of these candidates will advance to the general election in November. Audience members, please write your questions on the cards provided and pass them to League members who will advance them to me, the moderator. Let's get started with opening statements. Please speak directly into the microphone so that you can be heard both here in the room and over the broadcast. To the candidates, let's begin with your 2-minute opening statements, starting with V.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and to everyone here and those at home watching. My name is V. Fixmer-Orais, and my pronouns are they, them. I have been serving as a county supervisor for the past 4 years, and I am honored to represent Johnson County. And representation does matter, especially in a time when transgendered people are actively being stripped of their human rights and decency. I'm a parent of a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old and a partner to my wife of over 20 years. I am also a community and environmental planner with a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Iowa. I'm a Fulbright scholar who studied climate change impacts in the Philippines, a country of origin for my family. I own an award-winning planning firm focused on creating plans at the nexus of climate change and social and racial justice, because I deeply understand that the people we often make plans for are not at the table. About 8 years ago, the county invited me to their table and trusted me as a subject matter expert in planning. Through that experience, I better understood the positive impacts an elected official can have on their community. And now, as an elected official, I have continued to focus on those that are most vulnerable. I remain out front and vocal about the mistreatment of our manufactured housing residents and the out-of-state bad actors who extort our neighbors for higher rents while ignoring polluted drinking water and basic amenities. My work on the Inclusive Economic Development Plan, which my company created, has continued with our local BIPOC business owners who are creating multi-million-dollar initiatives by and for underestimated entrepreneurs, which diversifies our local economy. It's important in this seat as a supervisor to have a vision, and my vision for another term includes a focus on the biggest challenges to our society, AI, and how or if to engage in it, particularly data centers. I see a necessity for a multi-million-dollar investment in affordable housing and a restructuring of our county government to increase the power of our tax dollars and create a clearer distinction between our legislative activities and the administrative functions of the county. This is a vision that I hope will make us all the future ancestors to the world we want to live and leave behind. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Thanks to the League for having us. Thank you, Shannon. I am a longtime League member myself, so I appreciate the opportunity for this forum. I grew up on a century farm near Sutliff. I came to the University of Iowa. I worked a number of jobs in human services before being elected to the board. I am married to my wife, Dr. Melissa Fath, who is a cancer researcher at the university. We have 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and we have served as foster parents to 53 children over the years. I want to list a few of my accomplishments, of which I'm very proud. Raising the minimum wage, a massive increase in funding for affordable housing, creating the GuideLink Center, passing 2 conservation bond initiatives, being the first county to pass a human rights ordinance, creating free tax help project, adding rural warning sirens that you probably heard go off last night, creating a local foods policy council, and adopting a community ID. To be clear, nobody knows more about Johnson County government than I do. I know the budget better than anyone. I know the employees better than anyone. I know the policies and procedures better than anyone. I know the history better than anyone. I'm by far the most qualified person for this job. In addition, I am the hardest working board member. I spend more time in the office. I spend more time at community meetings. I spend more time at community events. You will see me more there than any other supervisor. I send an email every week to any interested constituent, not just when I'm running for office, but all the time. So what would I do if reelected? First of all, we're facing a crisis, mostly created by Donald Trump and Kim Reynolds, but we're going to have to recover, just like we recovered from COVID and floods. We've got to continue to work on affordable housing, mental health care, and I am going to be supporting a jail. I don't believe my opponent will. Thank you very much for coming, and I look forward to all your questions.
Thank you, candidates. Our first question is from the League of Women Voters. With a change in the law, Johnson County has been divided into 5 districts to elect county supervisors, and people will vote for the individuals running in their home districts. The elected supervisors will join the Johnson County Board of Supervisors and work for both their districts and for the county. How will you balance the expectations of your district with county-wide needs? How do you expect this change to affect the work of the board? Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, well, having served already as a supervisor, I have always balanced the needs of everybody in the county, and I plan on doing that if reelected. As I mentioned in my opening, I'm a farm boy, so I grew up rural. I understand rural issues. I also have lived in this district in the center of Iowa City for a long time. So I think I'm the perfect person to balance this new district system. I've never been afraid to fight for an issue if I thought that it was not working for rural people, or vice versa. If it favored rural people disproportionately to urban folks, I've always been able to speak up on that, and I will continue to do that.
Yes, we are elected to serve Johnson County residents, and that's all residents. And I think that you'll see that especially when you look at our 5-year plan for our roads infrastructure. That's something that we prioritize every year, and that absolutely impacts our rural residents, make sure that farmers can get to the markets, get their crops in the ground. All of those things are incredibly important. One thing as a planner that I know is true is that we don't know how people in our district, what their priorities are, unless we ask them. So I've already started a campaign in my campaign months ago, a survey that I've actually cast pretty broad into our district to understand what are the concerns of our residents in District 4. And what I've heard a lot is affordable housing. What I've heard a lot is that people are concerned about their neighbors, especially in this authoritarianism at this point. So my philosophy is not just that I represent, but that I ask, what kind of representation do you want? What are the issues that you care about? And so that's incredibly important to me.
All right. Thank you. For our first audience question, please name your biggest accomplishments as supervisor, as well as a disappointment that you still wish to address. V, you have the first answer.
Yeah. Honestly, being elected is probably one of the first things that I will say I'm very proud of. I think that representation does matter. The thing that I am most proud of is the start of the Transgender Advisory Committee. And it's not just politics that are identity politics, but it's because it was created by and for the people. The point of that committee is that we can't just keep doing proclamations. We can't just be saying that we're going to have a Transgender Day of Visibility, knowing that visibility for transgender people is lethal in this country. And so what I created was something that was led by the community to say, how can Johnson County be a safer place? There is no safe place for us, but how can it be a safer place, and what can we do? How can we address things like being safe in bathrooms just in a restaurant? Right now, the committee is undergoing a bathroom restaurant initiative mapping in the corridor, and that is because they created that need, and the job of the county is to then support them. So we have a social services intern who's helping with that. So that's how I see we need to address those issues. In terms of the disappointment, okay, I'll just stop there.
Yep.
A couple of the things that I think are among my biggest accomplishments. One was when we raised the minimum wage. According to economists who studied that, 35,000 people who worked in Johnson County got a raise over that time. And when the state finally repealed it a little under 2 years later, very few people went back to a lower wage than they had before. So literally, I helped raise the tide for a number of our poorest people in our community. Very proud of that. We passed 2 conservation bonds. There's going to be thousands of acres and miles of bike trail that will be here long after all of us are gone, and I'm incredibly proud of that effort. And I also want to mention the GuideLink Center, which is a wonderful opportunity for folks who don't belong in jail, but also don't belong at UIHC, but they need somewhere to be. And GuideLink Center has filled that niche very well. Very proud of that. There's a number of things that you'd like to have accomplished. The list is too long, frankly, for me to list. The needs are tremendous, and they just go on and on.
You. For our next question, would you support a new jail and a new jail bond? Why or why not? Starting with Mr. Sullivan.
I am very much in favor of a new jail. We need it badly for a lot of different reasons. One is simply humanitarian. The current jail is a human rights violation. There's not enough space for people. There's no access to fresh air, light. They don't have access to exercise. They don't have proper access to library, et cetera. I think it's important to point out we have spent a lot of time and money on alternatives. The jail population is almost half what it was when I took office because we've done some good work. But we cannot fix everything upstream. Even places like Scandinavia, France, Germany have jails, and they have jails that are actually pretty close in size to Johnson County because we have one of the lowest incarceration rates in the country. So even though they have great gun laws, full health care, et cetera, they have jails. We need a jail as well.
Yes, I do agree that the facilities are failing at the jail that we have. There are human rights violations or issues there. And I think that what I have fought for is a decrease in the number of beds and also more of a focus on preventative measures. And that's why I have been out front saying that if we are going to be supporting $99 million for a jail bond, we need to be supporting $99 million for an affordable housing bond. Because we know that when we look upstream and actually take care of people's basic needs and decency, then we will have continue the decline in the jail population, which has been on a decline for over decades. And so I continue to be out front in saying that if we are going to be investing this as a community, I think for Johnson County, we also need to be looking at a much bigger investment for our affordable housing, which is honestly the highest costs in the state of Iowa are in Johnson County. We need to address that just as urgently as we need to address our jail system, our jail building. And also just wanted to point out that, yes, while there may be First Nations that have jails that are similar to ours, their entire philosophy around jailing is completely different. You have people that are in therapy, and there are so many vast differences. It's not a comparison of apple to apples to say that First Nations have similar jails, even if it's the same population.
As a resident of unincorporated Johnson County, why should I vote for you? Starting with V.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I believe that I am absolutely qualified for this position. As I mentioned, I have a research background, and while a lot of people claim that I just stick to identity politics, I actually ran on inclusive economic development and affordable housing. The inclusive economic development plan that my company put forth, Iowa City invested over $4 million in that, and that is why Dream City is what it is right now. The Dream City building is by and for people of color, and that's exactly the vision that we need in Johnson County. I believe in inclusivity and accessibility in ways that my other colleague cannot. I come from a place of being in the margins. I understand what it feels like to have barriers consistently thrown in my face. And so my big priority, no matter what project I'm looking at, is how do we remove barriers? How do we resource the people that we know are incredibly vulnerable? And I do believe that that is the Johnson County that we are. I think that that's what makes us different in the state, actually, is that we care about people's humanity.
Could you repeat the question, please, Shannon?
As a resident of unincorporated Johnson County, why should I vote for you?
Thank you. I lived in unincorporated Johnson County. I know what it's like. I spend an awful lot of time on roads issues. I spend an awful lot of time on planning and zoning issues. If you talk to the folks who work in planning and zoning and work in roads, I'm the person who's constantly sending them, I heard from so-and-so, what's the response to this? I heard from so-and-so, what's the response to this? I spend a lot of time with those departments talking about what works, what doesn't work, and what we can do better in the future. I'm very proud of my work there. I think if you talk to the rural residents, they'll agree.
Right.
A minute?
You have more time, yeah.
Oh, I'm okay.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll take his minute, actually.
No, that's not how it works.
I'm kidding.
All right. Please describe your vision for Johnson County for the next 2 years under Trump as we live in unprecedented times.
Am I first, Shannon?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned in my intro, I have been the chair through some disasters that this community has faced. I was the chair during the big flood in 2008. I was the chair during COVID. We came through both of those very well, and I will tell you that I think my leadership had something to do with that. In both of those cases, we had to deal with unpredictable disasters. These are now man-made disasters, and frankly, these are coming from, Donald Trump is what was mentioned in the question, but I will tell you, we face more problems from the Reynolds administration and the Iowa legislature than from Trump even. And it is much like COVID or a flood in that we are going to have to recover. There's going to be recovery that happens over the next few years, and I think I'm the right person to lead that recovery. I've been through it before, and I think I've done a good job of leading us through that in the past, and I think I'll do so again. I do think there's a lot of opportunities to do good things, though, and not just recover.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever faced a time like this before. I like to say that we were in the public health pandemic with COVID, but we're in the moral pandemic with this administration, and the trickle-down effect of what this administration has across the Republican sector. And I believe that we need to lead with vulnerability in leadership, one that says that, yes, we are going to fight for you because we understand the issues, and that's absolutely how I lead. I think that one of the things that I bring to the table is questioning, is curiosity, because the ways in which we have dealt with things in the past are not going to work moving forward. And I believe that we need to make sure that our leaders are constantly questioning, is this what we have to do, or is this what we need to be doing? Is it by code that we have to do this, or are there creative solutions to how we get to a better place so that it's not something that we are going to have to look at later and say, man, I wish we could have done it this way. But my role as a supervisor is to continue to question and push and make sure that we are asking the right questions and also creating solutions that are outside of the box, because that's what this administration is doing.
Reproductive health care rights, like abortion, continue to be under attack in Iowa. What are you doing in Johnson County to help people get abortion health care? Please be specific. Starting with V.
Yeah. Well, like I said, one of the things that I was very proud of was creating a community committee by and for people. And one thing that we know is that transgender folks don't have access to health care in the way that they used to. One of the first things that they tackled was, how do we get health care given all the legal issues that we have in this state? And so we were able to put together a contract with the Emma Goldman Clinic, because we know that private care facilities are the last places, actually, that transgender folks, and probably many folks, honestly, will be able to get health care. And so we basically aligned that with their program already. Like, they already have a transgender health care program that helps folks. And so we, as if you are a Johnson County resident and have a certain income, you can also get those services. So directly impacting our health care in this community in ways that I've been told the county can't do anything about health care. I really always look for a way out of no way.
The county has been a longtime supporter, for example, of the free medical clinic, and that is a confidential health care facility. Folks don't need to have anything to walk in and get served, and I've been a longtime supporter of that. My wife has actually volunteered there for 34 of the last 40 years or something like that. So we continue to fund that as healthfully as we can. That facility's been through a lot of tough times. I speak with the executive director there quite a bit. But it is, like a lot of issues, something that if we really want to solve it, we've got to get out and vote and take care of things at the state and federal level.
All right. Our next question. Please describe the disciplinary process for employees as it relates to performance reviews. Is that process fair? Was it followed in the case of Guillermo Morales? And to group these up, if you would, in there, please also respond to the lawsuit about that.
I can't say anything about that. That's a pending lawsuit, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment.
I won't say anything about the lawsuit, but what I will say is that we do have processes. We have a human resource department, and we have a manual that we follow, and so yes, we have processes in place.
Great. Next, research demonstrates that the presence of a school resource officer contributes to more suspensions, expulsions, and arrests, as well as increased absenteeism and decreased graduation rates. In addition, the presence of SROs has severe and disproportionate consequences for Black, Indigenous, and Latinx students, as well as students with disabilities. Please share how you voted or would have voted for the request to partially fund an SRO at Clear Creek Amana Middle and High Schools. V.
Yeah, I voted against having a school resource officer, and there is a lot of data that shows why that is, and local data, in fact, that we poured through. The thing that I will say is, the Clear Creek Amana School Board is voted in, and they have absolute purview to do what they need to under local control. And B, I am never one to say that more guns is a solution to any situation. I would not want, I would feel very uncomfortable if my own child went to a school where there was an armed SRO officer, and I understand that there may be differences there, but I know that we have, gun laws, people can own guns. So that is a lot of what I base my information on. However, the data bears out time and time again that who is impacted are, quite frankly, my kids, as non-binary kids, as kids who are, of color. And so I continue to vote no and answer to that. But as I said before, the Amana School District is free to do what they want with their own local control.
I did vote no on it. I agree that there was a lot of data available, and that data led me to vote the way that I did. I wish my opponent would follow data in similar situations, like when we had a juvenile detention vote where there was good data and they voted the other way, or community violence intervention where they voted the other way. Those are both issues that have a lot to do with guns. I've got a perfect score. I've been a Gun Sense approved candidate every time I've ever run, and I'm very proud of that fact. So I think the other difference is that I was in agreement with V on the vote, but I treated the people who came here from Clear Creek Amana School District with the respect that they deserved in front of the board.
All right, next. There's been a discussion about creating a housing bond similar to the jail bond. How will you ensure that manufactured housing communities are included in that plan, especially since many low-income families rely on them as one of the last affordable housing options? Mr. Sullivan.
I do believe that the county should do some kind of bonding for housing at some point. The timing right now is not right. First of all, statistics, again, if you use data, show that if you have two competing things on a ballot, like the jail and something else, anybody who has any question on either one, they will both fail. So I don't want to create a red herring that is it's a poison pill for the jail. And I don't want to do that to the jail. In addition, I've passed big things before. I've been on the committee that passed 2 school bonds, 2 conservation bonds. I helped get the JEC put together here. You only do that by bringing people together. We have not had any discussions. I've heard a bunch of stuff about how many houses we're going to put in Coralville and Solon. We haven't talked to Coralville or Solon. We need to spend at least a year creating a committee with a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds so that we are working with Iowa City and all the communities to come up with a bonding plan that works for everybody. We're not there yet.
Can you repeat the question?
Yep. There has been discussion about creating a housing bond similar to the jail bond. How will you ensure that manufactured housing communities are included in that plan, especially since many low-income families rely on them as one of the last affordable home ownership options?
Yeah, thank you. So yes, as I mentioned before, I am very interested in pursuing our affordable housing bond because I understand that there are upstream impacts that we can address. Manufactured housing is an issue that I care deeply about, and the ways in which that the county can help is so vast and far. We could purchase the land, we could do many things, we could offer programs, and I think if you look at the data, which I have looked at the data, and if we want to talk about data in jail beds, then we would see the decrease in jail beds that my colleague here voted to increase, that as we've had decreases in those beds, why would we need a jail that is bigger? So I think that when you look across the landscape of what is socially impacting us, affordable housing is a way to really get at how do people have a safe place to lay their head at night? How do kids have a place that is consistent so that they can be in their schools and they're not having to worry about where they're going to live next? It is an issue that we have data on, and yet we don't do as much as we could. And so let's be bold. Let's say the thing, which in this case is the jail or housing, and I'm going to pick housing every time.
It's not either or.
Well, no rebuttals, please. All right. Being a supervisor is a full-time job. Please speak to how you spend your 40 hours, if you spend 40 hours, starting with V.
Yeah. So I know that my colleague here has said that he's the hardest working supervisor, and I say, great, I'm happy for you for that. I think that the other thing to look at is it's not working harder, it's working smarter. And so I also spend a lot of my time in the community. I also spend time in places that my colleague is not. And those are places that we have people who are housing insecure, food insecure, people who have children and grandchildren who are trying to find health care at the borders of this state, much like women try and find health care at the borders of this state. I spend time at night, 10 o'clock at night, people calling me, asking me, how do I help my kids talk about being different at school? What's the bullying policies? I navigate spaces that none of my colleagues rarely have the opportunity to navigate because of who I am and what I represent. And so that accessibility is absolutely key. And of course, completely forgot the question. But I do believe that, what was the question?
Do you work 40 hours, and
Yeah.
how do you spend your time?
And so I spend a lot of my time working for and by the people, and it's not in the office.
Yes, I spend over 40 hours every week working, and much like V described, I spend a lot of time in the community. I used to live over in the Broadway neighborhood, for example. I spend a lot of time with different marginalized communities, people with disabilities. I've spent a lot of time over the years in our mobile home parks with folks who live there. We've been, there's a tendency that this issue just came up. We've been working on this forever. I see Senator Dvorsky in the crowd. We had a bill that he and Senator Bolcom proposed about 15 years ago to take care of all these mobile home issues. It was defeated by one vote in the Senate. So we've been working on this a long time. It's not new. I go to the free lunch program. I talk to people all the time. And that includes everybody, not just the poor people in the community. You got to speak to the business community. You got to speak to everybody, and I do that.
All right. Next, water quality and public land access is poor in Iowa. What have you done, or what will you do to improve that? Starting with Mr. Sullivan.
Well, the biggest thing is 2 conservation bonds, $50 million that goes exactly to that. That's exactly what we did. Water quality and land conservation. What was the other part, water quality and?
Public land access.
So, we have probably 1,000 acres of public land because of my effort that we did not have before. The conservation director was in giving us a report just the other day, and it's very clear from our budget, we wouldn't have bought any land in the last 15, 16 years without the conservation bond. Not one stitch of land. And instead, we have all these bike trails and all this land because of my initiative. So I'm very proud of that. That's also had very real impacts on our human health because we've got more trees, we've got more prairies, we've got more open area, places for people to recreate. It's all been very good. Do we have to do more? Of course we have to do more. One of the things that I'm kind of upset about is over the last 3 or 4 years, this board has gotten completely away from some stuff we used to do environmentally, but on a real micro level. Like we used to not allow water bottles, things like that. We got to get back to doing more of that.
All right. And what may be the last one, or
I
might
can
be.
get it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, please. Getting ahead of
You can
myself.
answer it. You want to go ahead? Yeah, so I'm actually a trained watershed planner. I have over a decade of experience in watershed planning, and my firm has actually created resilient watershed plans here in Coralville. And that was in partnership with our food pantry because we knew that the people that were impacted by flooding were those that were already housing insecure. So I have a lot of experience, whether that's the soil quality that we know we have to manage before it gets to the water. But one of the things that I really want to talk about in relation to that is data centers. So we have in Iowa the biggest data center in the world for Meta, and that's in Altoona. We also have just 40 minutes north of us, QTS data center that I toured. I toured both of these data centers, by the way, but my colleague did not. Data centers are one of the biggest issues in our country. And so it is incredibly important that we are on top of this issue. Right now, we currently have a moratorium, but when you look at the amount of water, energy that these facilities use and the economic impacts that they will have on our community, we have to be on the boots. And I feel as though that is one of the biggest things that we need to be looking at next.
All right. And one more before we move into closing statements. Some of the county roads are in terrible condition. Have you driven the county roads on a regular basis? What will you do to fix roads with limited resources? Starting with you, V.
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we have a very robust and honestly should be an award-winning 5-year roads master plan, and that includes roads and bridges. But we invest heavily in our Johnson County roads because we understand how important that is. That farmers get out there, but also our rural residents are able to access their health care, their foods, their getting kids to and from school. So I am also the liaison for our secondary roads department manager. And as a planner, I'm very invested in how we're growing the county, making sure that our roads are being impacted not by, big commercial development in areas that they shouldn't be. I understand as a trained planner what it means to have smart growth around our city borders, and that impacts our roads. So you can't just look at roads. You have to look at the whole picture, which honestly is what we do in this position. So but you always have somebody complain about the road in front of their house, and I welcome that. We do need to know that.
I have just spent some time touring the roads, responding to people who've commented on the Johnson County Facebook about specific roads and said, tell me where, I'll go look. So I've gone and looked. I communicate with then our road superintendent, Kevin Braddock, and he takes a look himself. He's the expert, not me. I think it's interesting because we have had some disconnect sometimes between secondary roads and planning and trying to get that together. We had a committee that we formed to address that. I specifically asked V to be on it because I knew they had experience in that area. There were 4 hours of meeting. 1 2-hour meeting, V was there for an hour, and the other they missed. And meanwhile, we did come up with a policy, a little bit of a switch in policy that we think will help the planning and the roads work together so that those two are a little more synchronous when we approve our 5-year road plan. I do think there's a lot of truth to the fact that the worst road in the county is the one that you have to drive on all the time. People complain, especially this time of year. We do what we can. We do what we can.
All right, now on to closing statements. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement, starting with you, Mr. Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you again to the League for putting on this forum. As I said, I'm a longtime League member, and I appreciate this. I appreciate everybody who showed up. I've been to a lot of these over the years. This is one of the bigger crowds I've ever seen at one, honestly. And I appreciate everybody that would be tuning in at home as well. Like I said in my introduction, nobody knows more about Johnson County government than myself. I know the budget better. I know the programs and policies better. I know the employees better. I know the history better. I am the most qualified person for this job. I listed a bunch of accomplishments, raising the minimum wage, huge investments in affordable housing, GuideLink Center, conservation bonds, the list goes on and on. I do not take this public office for granted. It is a sacred trust. I take it very seriously, and that's why I work hard at this job. With that said, I would like to humbly request the honor of your vote somewhere between the early voting schedule that starts on the 13th of May and goes through the 2nd on Election Day. I have materials out there, signs out there, and contact information, and I would be happy to talk with anybody afterwards if they'd like to discuss anything further. And thank you once again to the League for this opportunity. I think this is extra important in this environment we have in which there's really not a lot of local media. So people are only going to get a couple of opportunities to hear from us both, and this is probably the most important one. So I really do appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Iowa City Senior Center for hosting us, and thank you to everyone that has taken time out of their day to join us. What we are facing now is a federal government that is actively unraveling the fabric of our society, spreading fear and misinformation, and using our own law enforcement agencies against our neighbors and friends. What we are facing now is a state government that is complicit in this dangerous authoritarianist pathway, and really the only state to actually strip human rights protections from its residents. And I'm proud to serve as a county supervisor who will not pre-comply, who will question the status quo and make sure that we continue to direct our resources toward making this county, our community, a thriving and welcoming place for all. We often say in our board meetings that we have a lot of work left to do, whether that's to research direct and indirect impacts of data centers or removing barriers so everyone has a place to call home here. I'm a trained urban and regional planner. I understand that when crisis hits, it's those already at the margins that are impacted most. I'm a small business owner raising a young family here. I have professionally worked in flood resilience, affordable housing, and inclusive economic development projects across this state and here at home. I am qualified for this position and have been honored to serve this community in this position for these past 4 years. But mostly, I have a vision. My vision for Johnson County prioritizes safe and decent housing over jail beds. My vision for Johnson County aligns internal administration to streamline efficiencies. And my vision for Johnson County invests in a future where our community, our young people, see themselves reflected in leadership. My vision comes from the fundamental understanding that we are living in the imagination of people from 400 years ago, and it's time to reimagine. I need more time. You've heard all that my opponent has accomplished because he has had 20+ years in office. So I ask you humbly for your vote, and if anything that I have said resonates with you, please visit my website and see my materials outside. Maraming salamat. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Thank you, those in attendance. Thank you to the many of you who have presented me with a wealth of questions. I regret that we did not have time to get to many of the other excellent questions that were submitted. Thank you to those watching at home and to the Senior Center and their staff and our local television stations for making the video cast and this event possible. We would like to remind you that the views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates and that sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. May 13th is the first day for early in-person voting and the first day for mailed ballots to be sent. June 1st is the last day for in-person early voting. Remember to vote in the primary on or before the regular election day on June 2nd. Good day to you all, and good luck.